Hi creative designers, welcome back, or welcome if you're seeing me for the first time. Now this particular MilkMaid dress that we're about to create has been randomly requested by different people for like a very long time. I decided to make research on how to make this dress and also find out a very simple way for us to be able to create this, because I've always wanted to have one. Now this is a beginner friendly tutorial. We're going to be taking really beginner steps. So if you already know how to create a basic bodice with that, you can go ahead and skip to the part where we start creating the cups for the MilkMaid. So yeah, if you're seeing this page for the first time, please do subscribe, put on your notification bell. Now these are the steps we'll be taking. We're going to draft out a basic bodice, the front and the back, and then we'll create the MilkMaid for the front. After we're done with that, we're going to go ahead and create the skirt pattern, the front and the back. So yeah, now my pattern paper here, the first point here is the shoulder. That is what I'm writing, so you guys know that this is the shoulder. Now I'll go ahead and divide my shoulder measurements by 2. That is the first thing you always mark on your pattern paper when you're making a basic bodice. Now from that point, I'll go down by 1 inch for the shoulder slope. So we're dropping the shoulder by 1 inch. Now I'll connect the slope to the neckline, and that is the center front. So I'll just go ahead and connect my slope to the neckline like this. The next point for us to mark is the armhole point. So I'll go ahead and divide my round armhole by 2. And then I'll mark this down from the slope. And before I connect this, I'll make sure I confirm that the shoulder measurement is what I have here. The width of the shoulder that I marked, which is 7.5, is what I have here. And as you can see, it is not the same. So I'll adjust and then I'll connect this with a straight line to the slope. And now I'll go ahead and rule an horizontal line. This is where the armhole curve will be sitting. So the next step for us to take is mark the vertical measurements. And the first measurement I'll be marking, the first point, is the bust point. So I'll place my tape on the pattern and mark 10.5 from the shoulder, not the slope, from the shoulder. I'll mark 10.5 and I'll rule an horizontal line, so I have a line for me to mark my round bust measurements. So the next point for us to mark is the under bust point. I'll place my tape, and you guys, the measurements that you need to mark down is provided on the screen. So watch what I'm doing, the measurements, find out your own points and mark this down on your pattern paper or your fabric. I think you should draft out a pattern first, because there's going to be a lot of slashing and spreading. Now the next point for us to mark is the waist point, which is also the length of this top. So I'm going to be making my 17 inches. So I'm marking 17 inches as my waist point. And you guys, I'm also labeling this out so you get to see and understand what we're doing. Now I'll go ahead and divide my round bust by 4 and mark this down on the armhole line like this. So my round bust divided by 4 is 9 inches. That's 36 divided by 4 gives you 9. And now after marking on the armhole line, I'll go ahead and find the middle point on my armhole. And to find the middle point, you fold your tape into 2 like this. Find out the middle, and then mark this down on your pattern. From the middle point, I'll go in by half an inch. Now because this is the front pattern, we always go in on the armhole, on the middle point of the armhole, go in by half an inch. And now I'll connect the half an inch with a curve to the bust, where the bust is meeting the armhole, and then to the slope. So once we're done, please, to get your apex, place the tape from one nipple to the other nipple, measure this out and divide whatever number you get by 2. Now my nipple to nipple is 8, divided by 2 gives you 4 inches, and I'll mark this on my pattern paper. I'll mark this on the bust point, I'll mark this on the under bust point, and also on the waist line. And I'll just go ahead and rule a straight line to connect these points together. This is our apex line. That is the dart line. Now that I have that sorted out, I'll go ahead and mark my upper bust point. This is also known as the chest point. So you can see the measurement on the screen. Take that measurement and mark this down on your pattern. As for me, my upper bust point, I'm using 7 inches. So I marked that out on my pattern. Now the dart we're going to be marking on the front pattern is 1 inch, 1 inch, that's 2 inches. So I'm going to mark 1 inch on each side of the apex line, that's that line. I'll take 1 inch here and then 1 inch here, making it 2 inches, and all this is happening on the waist line. Now that I have that 1 inch on the line, I'll go to my bust point. I'll come down by 1 inch, still on the apex line. I'll place my tape on the bust line and come down by 1 inch. And now I'll connect the 1 inch I have on the waist point. I'll connect this to the 1 inch below the bust. This is the dart we're taking for the front pattern. So now we'll just go ahead and divide our round measurements and mark this on each of the lines. So the first is the bust. I'll divide the round bust by 4, and my round bust divided by 4 gives you 9 inches. So I'll mark that down on the pattern. I'll move to my under bust point. I'll divide my round under bust by 4. And you guys, as you can see, I have darts on the under bust. So I'll go ahead and confirm how much I need to replace, because I need to replace my darts back on my measurements. So I'll place the tape and I got 1/2 and 1/4 inch. So I'll replace that back. Now the next point for us to divide is the round waist. I'll divide my round waist by 4. I'll mark this down, and I'll also repeat the same thing I did for the upper bust. I'll replace the dart. So I have 1 inch there, making it 2 inches. So what I'll be replacing to my waist is 2. And once I have all this sorted out, I'll just go ahead and connect the points together. Now I'm just going to go ahead and find out the difference between my bust and my under bust. I placed the tape from my bust to my under bust, and I found out the difference, 3 inches. Now I'm just going to place my tape on the dart line on the bust and mark 3 inches round. You guys just watch what I'm doing. I place the tape on the bust line, and I'm just going to move the other side of the tape round, and I'll just mark 3 inches round, because this is the difference between my bust and my under bust. So it shouldn't be hard for you to find out the difference between your bust and your under bust. Place your tape on your bust line and to your under bust, find out how much you have, and that is the difference. Now mark this particular measurement round like I just did, and you should have a cycle like this. And if your cycle isn't that perfect, girl, not all things have to be perfect, so just make do of the cycle, but make sure you get something close to perfect though. So this is what I will be working with. So the next thing for us to do is drop at the armhole by 1 inch. So I'll place my tape on the armhole, the curve at the base of the armhole, and mark 1 inch down. And once that is sorted out, I'll connect the curve from the middle point to the 1 inch. So on the middle point, I'll go in with a curve to meet the 1 inch, and now we have a new armhole point. Now on my new armhole point, I'm just going to come out by 1/2 inch. On the 1 inch we just marked, I'll come in by 1/2 inch. I'm using black marker, so you know that this is different from the basic bodice we just drafted. And now once I have my 1/2 inch, I'm going to mark 4 inches upward on my new armhole. From the base of the armhole, the new armhole, from the base, I'll place the tape like this and mark 4 inches upward. So go ahead and label this out so you know that we took 0.5 inches here. So now on the 4 inches I came up by from the new armhole, I'm going to mark 1/4 inch in like this. So this is the 4 inches point. I'm coming in by 1/4 inch. So I'll go ahead and connect the 1/4 inch to the 1/2 inches on the base of the armhole. So once I am done connecting the new armhole point, I'm just going to blend it like this to meet the measurements. Now all we have to do now from the underbust, we just have to follow this curve and connect it to the 1/2 inch on the armhole. Now just follow the curve. Use your curve ruler, or if you don't have a curve ruler, use your free hand. Just follow the curve like this and blend it to connect to the 1/2 inch on the armhole. Now we also need to connect this part like to the center front. We need to connect this part with the curve, but before then we have to mark 1 inch upward from the underbust. So I'm just going to place my tape and go up by 1 inch. So I'll place my curve ruler and also follow the curve like this from the 1 inch, or just blend it back like this. And yeah, that is that for this part. So now moving up to the upper bust, I'm just going to come down by 1.5 inch from the upper bust. So I'll place my tape like this, and then I'll mark 1.5 inch down from the upper bust. All I have to do now is connect this point to the top of the armhole. So you guys, we have our off shoulder armhole now, and what we need to do is connect this 1.5 inch to the top of the armhole with a curve like this. And yeah, that is it. So what I will do is adjust, and you guys, I'm just going to label this out so you know what we did here. 1.5 inch here, 0.75 here, that's 1/4 inch, and then we have the 0.5 here, and here we came up by 1 inch. And you guys, that is it. Like, it is just very simple. So what I will do now is trace out the parts that we're using for our top with a black marker, so you guys know where we are using. And this is it. Now to finish up this front pattern, I'm just going to add 1/2 inch allowance on the sides like this. All point is just getting the 1/2 inch. So I'll just mark 1/2 inch, and I'll use my ruler to connect, and then I'll blend it back to the armhole. And that is it for the front pattern, and we're going to be back to slash and spread after we're done cutting. But this is it. This is what we're using. I hope you guys understood how we're able to get the off shoulder armhole and how we're able to get the cup. I hope you guys understand. Please let me know in the comment section if you're following. Now this is my cup. I'm just going to detach the cup pattern from the base of the top, and I'm going to cut out the dart leg. I'm not going to cut it out on the cup, but on the base pattern of the top, I'm just going to cut the dart. And this is it. So you guys, let's go ahead and slash and spread this cup. So for the slashing of this cup, I'm just going to mark 1 inch apart. So I'll just keep marking 1 inch apart on the cup pattern, and then I'll rule a straight line to indicate that this is 1 inch, and this is 1 inch, and this is another 1 inch, and this is another 1 inch, like that. So once I'm done doing this, I have to label them out. I'm just going to number this because when we slash this, we need to piece them back together. We should know which goes where. So I'm just going to number 1 to 8, and there I'll go ahead and slash this open. Let me know in the comment section if this particular video was any help. Don't just watch, create, and not like or comment or even share. Please just do one of those. Let us know if this particular video was any help. Now I have a fresh pattern paper here, and this is going to be for the spreading. I went ahead to rule a line on the middle of the pattern, and this is just going to act as the bust line, the straight bust line. Also, you need to have your pins or your sellotape. This is going to really help us spread this. So I'll start with the number 1. I'll place the number 1 and I'll use my tape to hold this down. And as you can see, I'm making sure that the bust line on my number 1 sits on the line that I ruled on my fresh pattern paper. Now, next thing for us to do, after we place the number 1, I'll mark 1 inch apart from the number 1, and that is where I'll be placing my number 2. So once I was done spreading, this is what I have, and I'll just go ahead and trace this out. Make sure you follow each number carefully like this, and as you can see that the difference between each number is 1 inch, like the difference in the middle is just 1 inch. So I'm just going to mark ½ inch allowance round this pattern, like round every point is getting the ½ inch. So I'm just going to mark ½ inch round, and I'm using the black marker for this, so you know I added ½ inch round. And this is how the pattern looks. So I'm just going to cut out the excess that I'm not using. So this is what I have, and this is what I'll be using for my cup. Now let's go ahead and create the back pattern. Now this is my back bodice. I already created the slope and the armhole, divided my armhole by 2. I have my bust points here, I have my under bust, and I have the waist, which is the length. So what I will do is I'll go ahead and mark the chest line, which is the upper bust, like we did on the front pattern. So I'm just going to indicate that on the back also. And the next thing for us to do, you guys can see that I changed the marker. So my red marker was not working, so I had to change to green. So I'm just going to divide my round bust by 4 and mark this down on the armhole line, like we did on the front pattern. And once I have that sorted out, I'll go ahead and divide the armhole by 2 to get the middle point. And the middle point of my armhole is 4 inches. I'll just connect the middle points with a curve like this, and this is how you create the armhole for the back. And now we have to mark the apex point on all points. That's the nipple to nipple divided by 2. So I'm marking mine is 4 inches. I'm just marking that on the chest line, on the bust line, on the under bust line, and also on the waist line. And I'll just go ahead and rule a line, a straight line, to indicate that this is the apex line. The dart we're going to be marking on the back pattern is ½ inch on each side of the dart line. So I'm marking ½ inch here, and I'll mark ½ inch here. So I'll go up to the upper bust line and I'll mark 1 inch down. So from the chest line, which is the upper bust line, I'll mark 1 inch down. I'll go ahead and connect the 1 inch to the dart legs, to the ½ inch on the waist. And now we have our dart on the back pattern. So the next thing for us to do now is divide the round bust by 4. I'll go ahead and divide my round bust by 4. I'll mark this down. And now I have to replace my darts. Make sure you always replace your darts. So I'll replace my darts. I'll move to the under bust point. I'll divide my round under bust by 4. I'll mark that down and also go ahead to replace my darts. So never forget to replace your darts, you guys. I'm just singing this. Never forget to replace your darts. Now to the last but not the least point, which is the waist, I'll go ahead and divide my round waist by 4 and also replace the darts. And then I'll connect this And yeah, there you have it. So now what we have to do is drop the armhole like we did for the front. So go ahead and drop the armhole by 1 inch, just as we did on the front. And from that point, I'll connect from the middle point with the curve to meet our new armhole point. You guys, we did the same step on the front pattern, so make sure that you're understanding each step that we're doing, because we are repeating. So I'll go in by 1/2 inch from the 1 inch point. That's the base of our new armhole. I'll go in by 1/2 inch, and I'm just going to label that out. And now I'll place my tape from the base of the armhole and go up by 4 inches, just as we did on the front. I'll mark 4 inches upwards, and from that point, the 4 inches, I'll go in by 1/2 and 1/4 inch. That's 0.5 inch. And I'm just going to connect that to the 1/2 inch on the base of the armhole, just like we did on the front. So at this point and at this stage, you should understand what is happening, because this is the same thing we did for the front pattern, so we're just repeating. And now we have our new off shoulder armhole, and from the chest line, which is the upper bust line, I'm just going to mark 2.5 inch down. I'll connect the 2.5 inches to the 0.75 that we marked on the upper of the armhole. I try using my curve ruler, but now let me use the straight ruler first. And now I can go ahead and adjust to how I want the back to look. And I want the back to be really curvy, so I'm just going to adjust like this. Just go ahead and determine the shape you want for your back dress, and this is how I want mine to look. So I'm just going to adjust like we did for the front. We'll go ahead and add 1/2 inch on the sides, and then I'll go ahead and cut. You guys, I don't know if you guys are understanding that this particular MilkMaid dress is really simple. Like, making it is really simple. If you're able to really take your time to watch this video and understand, you'll just realize that making this is really simple. I hope you guys really understand, and you're able to just create one for yourself, just as I did. This is my first attempt, and I love my dress. I'll be creating more of this. So I'll go ahead and cut out my darts on the pattern, on the back pattern. I'm cutting them out totally. And you guys, this is how the back pattern looks. And that is it for the top part. So let's go ahead and create the skirt part. Now I have my pattern paper here, and this is my starting line. So this is going to be the waist point. I'll mark that here. And now I'll place my tape from the waist point and mark my hip point. So I'm just going down by 10 inches, and that is going to be my hip point. You guys, please go ahead and fold your pattern into 2. There is a reason why the pattern is folded into 2, and you guys are going to be finding out at the end, almost at the end of the video. So I'm just going to rule a line here and indicate that this is the length, but on the fabric I'll be changing the length because I want this to be a little bit long. And now we have the length. The first thing for us to do is mark our apex line, which is the nipple to nipple. So go ahead and divide your nipple to nipple by 2 and mark this down on your pattern like we did on the front top and the back top. So I'm just going to label that this is the dart line. And now on the waist, I'll be marking 1/2 inch on each side of the dart line. This is happening on the waist. And now I'll come down by 4 inches from the waist. I'll come down by 4 inches. I'll go ahead and connect the 4 inches to the 1/2 inch on the waist. Like this. Like this. And now we have created the darts for the front pattern. And now from the length, I'll be marking 1 inch on each side of the dart line, and this is for the slits. So right now we are creating the slits, and on each side of the dart line I'm just marking 1 inch. And from my hip, I'll come down by 5 inches, and that is going to be the starting point of my slit. So I'm just marking 5 inches down. Now I'll connect the 5 inches to the 1 inch on the length, and this is the starting point of my slit, and yeah, this is the opening, how much opening I'll be having on my slit. I'll go ahead and label this out so you know that this is the starting line of my slit. The 1 inch plus 1 inch makes it 2 inches, and that is it for the slit. So let's go ahead and divide our round measurements. The first we'll be dividing is the waist. I'll divide my round waist by 4, and I'll mark this down on the waistline, and I'll go ahead and replace my darts, and my dart there is 1 inch, so I'll be replacing that here. I'll move to my hip line. I'll divide my round hip by 4. I'll mark that down on the hip line, and there is no dart to be replaced, so I'll move down to the length. I marked 10.5. I'll add 2 inches to that, so what I'll be marking on my length is 12.5. So that is how open I want, that is how free I want it to be at the base. So you can decide to make yours freer by adding 3 or 4 or 5 inches to your hip measurement. So once I have that sorted out, I'll just connect all points together, and this is what we have for our front pattern. And I'll just go ahead and add 1/2 inch on all points. This is the allowance on the pattern. So this is done for the front pattern. We're done. I'm just going to go ahead and cut out the excess that we don't need, so you guys can see how this pattern looks. And yeah, now I'll go ahead and transfer my darts to the other part of the pattern paper, and this is what I'll do. I'll make sure that my ink from my marker is visible on the other side, and then I'll be using that to create the darts there. I'll just measure this out and mark the middle points, which is the 1/2 inch. I'll rule this down by 4 inches. I'll make sure it's 4 inches. And now I'll just connect this to my darts. Now I have my darts on the other side of the pattern paper. So let's go ahead and create the back pattern, you guys. So I have the fresh paper for the back pattern, and this is a single pattern paper. I'll go ahead and mark 1.5 inch for my zip. So this is the zip allowance, and that's the difference between the front skirt pattern and the back skirt pattern, is always the zip. So now I have my zip allowance. I'll be placing the front pattern after the zip allowance. So after the zip allowance measurements that I already ruled a line to indicate, I'll place my front pattern, and then I'm just going to put a bunch of things to hold it down, my scissors and my ruler. And what I'll do is extend the hip measurement to the zip line like this. And now on the waist, I'll mark 1 inch out from the zip line. I'm marking 1 inch out. I'll connect this to the 1.5 inch on the hip like this. But I'll just trace this because it's not equal. I'll trace it. Now for my hip, I'll come down by 5 inches. I'll place the tape, come down by 5 inches, and from that 5 inches I'll be marking 1 inch down to the length for the zip. So I'll just mark 1 inch out like this to the length, and this is the adjustment I always do on my skirt. So I'll connect, I'll trace out the length also. So I'm just going to connect the 5 inch to the 1.5 on the hip, and now we're done with the back. I'll go ahead and trace this out and cut out the excess that we don't need, both on the zip and on the side. So what I'm doing is practically tracing out the front piece and also cutting out my zip. And now you guys, this is the back pattern, and yeah, we have to mark our apex line. So after the zip line, I'm just going to mark 4 inches in. That is my apex line. I'll come down by 5 inch from the apex point. and I'll go ahead and confirm from the zip into this part if I have 4 inches, and I'll adjust this to 4 inches. Now I'll connect this point like this with a straight line. I'll go ahead and mark 1/2 inch on each side of the apex line, just as we did on the front skirt pattern, and then I'll connect the 1/2 inch to the 5 inches we have on the apex line. And that is the back dart. I'll just label this that this is the skirt back pattern. And you guys, now we have to work on the front pattern. The only thing we have to do now is cut out the dart and the slit. So I'll be cutting my dart out, but make sure you open up your pattern like this. Now you can see that this is the full front skirt piece or skirt pattern. This is the full front skirt pattern. I'll go ahead and cut out my slit. Now when you're cutting this particular front pattern on your fabric, you don't need to fold your fabric into 2 no more. What you need to do is just spread out your fabric and place the pattern just like this. You guys are going to be seeing it on the sewing video, so just stay tuned. If you know you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. Put on your notification bell, so when I upload the sewing version, you get this. And you guys, hope this particular pattern drafting was very detailed for you guys. Let me know in the comment section, and I will be seeing you on this next video, which is the sewing version. I love you guys so much. Keep being creative, and yeah, love and light to you. Bye.